The Taltharan Empire, masters of energy manipulation and advanced technology, had long viewed themselves as the pinnacle of galactic civilization. For centuries, their dominance remained uncontested, as they expanded across star systems, subjugating countless species. Their energy-based weaponry was their pride, capable of disintegrating entire fleets with precision strikes. So, when their scouts intercepted human communications and caught glimpses of Earth's technology, the reaction was nothing short of disdainful amusement. In the Grand Chamber of the Taltharan High Council, General Zyro stood before the assembly of commanders and scientists. His glowing form radiated confidence as he projected an image of Earth's military equipment, a montage of tanks, rifles, and heavy machine guns. The council burst into laughter. "Kinetic projectiles?" scoffed Zyro, his voice dripping with mockery. "These humans still rely on throwing chunks of metal. They are stuck in their primitive era while we have transcended such barbaric tools." The council unanimously agreed, humanity would fall easily. Unlike the technologically evolved species the Taltharans had encountered before, Earth seemed like an afterthought, a footnote in their expansion plans. Humanity's simplicity, they decided, made it unworthy of a prolonged conflict. The invasion would be swift, a demonstration of Taltharan superiority, and a useful lesson for any other species contemplating resistance. What the Taltharans missed in their arrogance, however, was humanity's unmatched capacity for adaptation and resilience. As their fleet prepared to depart, a few junior officers voiced concerns. They highlighted the humans' surprisingly rapid technological progress over a few centuries, but their warnings were dismissed as the overthinking of inexperienced minds. The invasion plans proceeded at full speed. The fleet launched from the core systems, thousands of ships cutting through hyperspace like celestial blades. On board, the soldiers celebrated their imminent conquest. Earth was merely another resource-rich planet waiting to be assimilated into the Empire. They anticipated little resistance. Humans, after all, had never even ventured far beyond their solar system. The first encounter with humans seemed to validate their confidence. A lone, unarmed research vessel orbiting Mars was quickly intercepted. The humans aboard attempted to communicate, waving through their windows in a gesture of peace or confusion. The Taltharan captain sneered and ordered the vessel to be disabled. With a single pulse from their energy cannon, the ship was rendered inert, drifting helplessly in space. The crew was taken captive, their primitive expressions of fear amusing the Taltharan soldiers. Word of this victory spread rapidly through the fleet. Stories of the humans' wide-eyed terror became the subject of jokes in the mess halls. Taltharan propaganda machines churned out narratives of an easy conquest, assuring their population that Earth would soon be integrated without any real cost. The arrogance ran so deep that many soldiers believed the humans would surrender as soon as the fleet entered orbit. But humanity was not idle. The scouts' arrival had triggered alarms across Earth's defense networks. Strategists scrambled to analyze the threat. The technological disparity was undeniable, but instead of despair, humanity turned to its greatest strength: creativity under pressure. The leaders of Earth's military forces knew they couldn't match the Taltharans in advanced weaponry, but they didn't need to. They just needed to exploit their strengths, mobility, resilience, and the sheer simplicity of their weapons. As the Taltharan fleet approached Earth's colonies, their arrogance blinded them to the warning signs. Their scouts reported unusual activity on outpost Artemis, a small human colony on the edge of Taltharan-controlled space. What the Taltharans dismissed as futile preparations were, in fact, the makings of a strategy that would challenge everything they thought they knew about warfare. The stage was set for a confrontation that would redefine the balance of power in the galaxy. The Taltharans, drunk on their own superiority, were about to face the full force of humanity's determination, a force that couldn't be measured by the sophistication of their weapons, but by the unyielding spirit of the soldiers who wielded them. Outpost Artemis sat on a desolate planet, a symbol of human persistence in the most inhospitable of places. The colony had no grandeur, no strategic significance beyond its position on the frontier. Its defense forces were modest, just over 100 soldiers, equipped with Earth's so-called primitive weapons, tools that had seen action for decades and, in some cases, centuries. Despite their rugged simplicity, these weapons were reliable, effective, and familiar. The soldiers who manned them knew their strengths, limitations, and the brutal efficiency with which they could operate under pressure. When the Taltharan fleet arrived, the skies above Artemis turned into a tableau of impending doom. Their sleek, alien ships descended with an aura of untouchable superiority, their engines humming with the kind of energy humans couldn't begin to replicate. The alien commanders issued their demands swiftly, broadcasting a message filled with condescension. Surrender, they said, and the colony would be spared. Resistance would mean annihilation. Commander Harris, the officer in charge of Artemis's defenses, listened to the broadcast with a quiet resolve. His grizzled features betrayed no fear as he looked at the soldiers gathered before him. "They think we'll roll over at the first sign of trouble," he said, his voice firm. "They don't know what we're made of. Let's show them." The preparations began immediately. The soldiers dug trenches and reinforced barricades with whatever materials they could scavenge. Heavy machine guns were mounted in strategic positions, their barrels gleaming under the harsh light of the planet's sun. Ammunition was distributed, and the soldiers checked their weapons with a precision born of countless drills. Everyone understood the stakes. Surrender was not an option, not because of pride, but because they knew what awaited them if they did. The Taltharans had made it clear in their past conquests. Those who submitted were stripped of their autonomy, their culture, and often their lives. As the humans prepared, the Taltharans moved into position. Their dropships descended gracefully, landing in formation on the outskirts of the colony. The alien soldiers disembarked, their shimmering energy shields glowing faintly as they advanced. Each step was calculated, their movements methodical. To them, this was just another operation, one more step in their empire's relentless march across the galaxy. The first encounter was brief. A handful of human scouts, positioned on the outer perimeter, observed the Taltharan advance. Plasma blasts erupted from the aliens' weapons, the energy scorching the rocky terrain. The scouts fired a few shots in response, not to engage but to draw the invaders closer to the main defensive line. They retreated quickly, melting into the landscape as they executed their orders with precision. When the Taltharans reached the human fortifications, they paused. The colony's defenses seemed laughable: basic trenches, sandbag walls, and machine gun emplacements. The alien commander, watching from a secure position, scoffed. "Primitive," he muttered, echoing the sentiment that had become a mantra among his kind. Then, the humans opened fire. The air erupted with the thunderous roar of gunfire. Heavy machine guns unleashed streams of bullets, their relentless barrage slamming into the Taltharan's energy shields. At first, the shields held, their advanced technology absorbing the kinetic energy. But the humans didn't stop. They concentrated their fire, targeting individual soldiers with pinpoint accuracy. Slowly, the shields began to waver, their glow flickering as they struggled to dissipate the sustained assault. And then they failed. The first alien soldier fell, his shield collapsing under the onslaught. A single bullet punched through his armor, sending him crashing to the ground. The humans didn't pause to celebrate. They kept firing, their weapons tearing through the Taltharan ranks with brutal efficiency. For all their technological advancements, the aliens had never faced an enemy like this, one that relied not on finesse but on overwhelming force. The Taltharans hesitated. Their confidence, so unshakable moments before, began to falter as their soldiers fell one after another. The alien commander barked orders, demanding they regroup and push forward, but the humans were relentless. The trenches became kill zones, the narrow approaches funneling the aliens into concentrated fields of fire. The heavy machine guns roared without pause, their operators methodically targeting anything that moved. Harris watched from his command post, his binoculars trained on the battlefield. He could see the cracks forming in the Taltharan assault. For all their arrogance, the aliens were unprepared for this kind of warfare. They had expected panic, chaos, and quick capitulation. Instead, they faced discipline, strategy, and the raw, unyielding power of kinetic weaponry. The battle continued for hours, the ground littered with the remains of alien soldiers and shattered equipment. The humans suffered losses too, brave men and women who gave everything to hold the line. But they held. Against all odds, they held. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the battlefield in shadows, the Taltharan forces retreated, their confidence shaken. In the quiet that followed, Harris addressed his soldiers. "This was just the beginning," he said. "They'll be back, and they'll be stronger. But today, we showed them who we are. We showed them that we don't break." The soldiers nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They knew the fight was far from over, but they also knew something else. For the first time, the Taltharans had tasted defeat. And that taste, bitter and unfamiliar, would linger. The Taltharans regrouped under the glow of their hovering command drones, the faint hum of their advanced technology a sharp contrast to the chaotic echoes of the human resistance. Reports of failure rippled through the alien ranks, a sensation foreign to their culture. For a species that had conquered countless systems without contest, the notion that an inferior race could resist them was both baffling and infuriating. Their commanders wasted no time recalibrating. A second wave was deployed, this one larger and armed with enhanced weaponry. Heavier energy shields were issued, and mechanized walkers capable of withstanding concentrated fire were brought into the fray. The Taltharans believed they had underestimated their enemy once, but now they were ready to crush them with overwhelming force. On the human side, there was no illusion of respite. Commander Harris had predicted this escalation and had prepared accordingly. The soldiers worked tirelessly, repositioning weapons, setting new traps, and recalculating firing zones. They had the element of surprise before, but now the Taltharans would come with full knowledge of their capabilities. It was a daunting prospect, yet none of the defenders wavered. They knew what was at stake, not just their lives, but the survival of humanity against an enemy that viewed them as nothing more than an obstacle to be erased. When the second assault began, the Taltharans advanced with renewed confidence. Their walkers led the charge, massive machines equipped with plasma cannons that could melt through solid rock. Behind them, infantry units moved in formation, their shields glowing brighter and thicker than before. They fired in disciplined volleys, each plasma shot designed to suppress and destroy. The humans responded with precision. Mortar crews targeted the advancing walkers, their shells striking with devastating force. While the Taltharan shields absorbed some of the impact, the sheer kinetic energy caused enough disruption to slow their advance. Machine gunners focused their fire on the infantry, aiming for the vulnerable gaps between shield arrays. Every bullet mattered, and every soldier knew their role in the defensive line. As the battle raged, it became clear that the Taltharans had underestimated one critical aspect of human warfare: adaptability. While the aliens relied on rigid strategies and technological superiority, the humans thrived on improvisation. When a walker breached the outer defenses, a squad of engineers quickly rigged an explosive charge using scavenged materials. The resulting blast toppled the machine, its wreckage blocking the advance of those behind it. The Taltharan soldiers, for all their training, began to falter. They were unaccustomed to this kind of resistance. Their energy shields, while formidable, could not sustain prolonged bombardment from multiple angles. Their plasma rifles, designed for quick and precise engagements, proved less effective against the humans' entrenched positions. The battlefield, once a place where the Taltharans dictated terms, had become a chaotic and unpredictable arena where the humans excelled. Amid the chaos, Harris spotted an opportunity. The Taltharan formation was beginning to crumble, their infantry scattered and their walkers stalled. He ordered a counteroffensive, a calculated risk that could turn the tide completely. Small squads of soldiers moved out from the trenches, using the terrain to flank the alien forces. Armed with grenades and rocket launchers, they targeted key units, exploiting every weakness they could find. The Taltharan commander, watching from a distance, could hardly believe what was happening. These humans, whom his species had dismissed as primitive, were dismantling their forces with tactics that defied logic. The commander barked orders for a retreat, but it was too late. The humans pressed their advantage, their relentless assault breaking the will of the alien soldiers. By the time the battle subsided, the Talthuran forces were in full retreat. Their once imposing machines lay in ruins, their advanced weapons scattered across the battlefield like relics of a failed invasion. The humans, battered but unbroken, stood victorious. For the Talthurans, the loss was not just a tactical failure, it was a humiliation. Their confidence had been shattered, their belief in their own invincibility shaken to its core. For the first time, they were forced to confront a question that had never crossed their minds. What if their technology wasn't enough? What if humanity's spirit, ingenuity, and sheer will to survive were forces they could not overcome? As the human soldiers regrouped and tended to their wounded, there was no celebration. The cost of the battle had been high, and they knew this was only the beginning. But amidst the exhaustion and grief, there was a quiet sense of pride. They had faced the galaxy's most powerful empire, and had not just survived, they had won. And for Commander Harris, that victory carried a simple, unspoken message: humanity was far from primitive. They were just getting started. The aftermath of the battle left the battlefield eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos that had raged only hours before. The smoldering wreckage of Talthuran walkers and the scattered remains of their soldiers painted a grim portrait of defeat. For the Talthurans, this was not just a loss, it was an unthinkable failure that defied everything they believed about themselves and their technology. The humans, though victorious, bore the heavy weight of the battle. Soldiers moved through the trenches, tending to the wounded and counting their losses. Despite the exhaustion etched into every face, there was a palpable sense of triumph. They had faced an enemy that considered itself unbeatable and emerged standing. It wasn't just a victory for the soldiers of Artemis, it was a message to humanity itself: they could fight, and they could win. Commander Harris stood at the edge of the makeshift command post, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the retreating Talthuran ships had vanished. His voice, though quiet, carried the resolve of a leader who had faced the impossible and refused to yield. "They'll come back," he said, addressing his second-in-command. "But next time, they won't be so confident." The Talthuran fleet, now reduced and scattered, regrouped in orbit. The alien commanders convened in an emergency session, their tones no longer filled with arrogance but with anger and confusion. How had such a primitive species defeated them? Their tactical reports showed the humans had used nothing but projectile weapons, explosives, and rudimentary fortifications. Yet these tools had been wielded with such precision and determination that they had proven devastating. Among the soldiers who survived, murmurs of doubt began to spread. The unshakable belief in Talthuran superiority had cracked, and in its place grew an uneasy awareness of their own vulnerabilities. For the first time, they were forced to consider the possibility that their technology was not the ultimate solution, that there were other kinds of strength in the galaxy they had yet to understand. On Artemis, the human defenders wasted no time celebrating. Harris knew that survival depended on preparation. Engineers scavenged parts from the destroyed Talthuran machines, hoping to reverse engineer the technology for future use. Medical teams worked tirelessly to stabilize the wounded, while the soldiers reinforced their positions, knowing the Talthurans would not accept this defeat lightly. The news of the battle spread rapidly across human-controlled space. For a species that had only recently begun to explore the galaxy, the victory was monumental. It wasn't just about repelling an alien invasion, it was about proving that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the universe's most powerful forces. This was not the end of the story but the beginning of a new chapter. The Talthuran Empire, once unwavering in its dominance, now faced an existential question. How could they defeat an enemy that fought with such tenacity, that turned every perceived weakness into a strength? Their confidence had been built on the assumption that their technology rendered them invincible, but Artemis had shattered that illusion. The humans had demonstrated that war was not won by technology alone but by strategy, courage, and the will to persevere. Harris, reflecting on the battle, understood the broader implications. This was not just about Artemis, or even humanity's survival. It was a clash of philosophies, a test of whether arrogance and complacency could overcome adaptability and resilience. Humanity had shown that they were not to be dismissed or underestimated, and the Talthurans would have to reckon with that reality. As the sun set on the battered colony, the soldiers gathered around their commander. Harris addressed them with the same unwavering determination that had carried them through the battle. "Today, we reminded them who we are," he said. "We're not defined by the tools we use or the technology we lack. We're defined by our will to fight, to endure, and to win. And as long as we have that, there's nothing in this galaxy that can stop us." The soldiers nodded, their expressions a mix of pride and resolve. They knew the fight was far from over, but they also knew they were ready. The Talthrans had called their weapons primitive, their tactics outdated, their species insignificant. But on this day, humanity had proven otherwise. They had faced the galaxy's mightiest empire and emerged victorious, not because of their weapons, but because of their unbreakable spirit. For the Talthrans, the loss at Artemis would become a bitter memory, a cautionary tale whispered among their ranks. For humanity, it was a defining moment, a turning point that solidified their place in the galaxy. The message was clear: humanity was here to stay, and they were far from primitive. They were a force to be reckoned with, and this was only the beginning.